The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk Politics. Our guest this week is Whitby MP Ryan Turnbull, who is currently isolating. We're taping this April 1st, and a couple of days ago, you had gone on Twitter to reveal you have COVID for a second time.
Yeah, unfortunately, I caught COVID. Don't know how exactly, but I've been isolating all week here in Ottawa in my lovely hotel room, and doing my part to make sure I don't spread COVID around. Obviously, wasn't what I anticipated for my week this week, but
No.
You roll with the punches in this pandemic, and I've just had a good productive week, and I'm feeling quite a bit better now. So certainly it's better this round of COVID-19. I had it before I was vaccinated, and it was horrible. So this time it's been a lot more mild, but I think people need to be aware, Debra, that COVID's not over, and I really encourage people to continue to remain cautious and wear a mask and try to protect themselves and other people around them.
Well, you were telling me that you had ended up even in the hospital with the first time you had it, right?
I had a short visit with the emergency room because I was having trouble breathing in the first time I got it. So, it was a little bit concerning. Mm-hmm. And it took a long time to recover, to be honest. I don't think I felt right for about 2 months after I got that original bout. So I'm really glad that I'm very fortunate. I feel very fortunate as a Canadian to have had access to, world-class sort of technology in terms of vaccines and have that provided to us. And so I'm triply vaccinated. I'm very proud of that. Happy to even get another booster if I need to at any point in the future. And I think it certainly has enabled my body to fight COVID off this time around a lot more easily. So.
And you've been incredibly cautious throughout this whole thing as well, right? I mean, it's not like you took off the mask and threw caution to the wind.
No, I've probably been, my wife and I, and, our government has been really promoting that, all the different protective layers that we can implement. And, I understand that that's, been challenging for everyone to follow and sort of willingly just comply with and to protect each other. But I've been very, very cautious. My family and I are probably one of the most cautious families that I know. So, it just goes to show you can't be cautious enough in a sense and even with all of the protective measures, you can still get COVID-19. So
yeah,
I do have to say, though, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't follow them, because some people might have a defeatist mentality and say, oh, if we follow all of them, we get it anyway, then why should we do it? I think it's still contributing to slowing down the virus and protecting other people and having a lot less spread and transmission. So hope people could just continue to remain cautious. And
there you go, triple vaxxed, and it's a whole different experience this time around, correct? So absolutely,
yeah, and really glad that I'm, I've only been in isolation for about 5 days and feeling quite a bit better. So, it's relatively mild this time around. But
and how's the family? How is your wife and daughter? Are they okay?
They're wonderful. Well, it's funny because I either got it traveling here, or I'm not exactly sure how it happened, but they don't seem to have it. So they seem to be fine. So they're doing okay, and they're staying home. I'm actually going to stay in Ottawa a little longer till I'm confident that I won't be taking it back to my family. So,
yeah. Well, you are sounding incredible, looking incredible for somebody who's going through COVID. So
I appreciate that.
There you go. You sound better than I do. I want to spend a lot of our time today talking about the Early Learning and Childcare Agreement that was just signed between the province of Ontario and the federal government. Ontario, the last province to take advantage of this offer. I want to start by asking you, what does the federal government provide for child care in Canada. You think of it basically, though, as a provincial responsibility. But what is the federal government's role in this?
Well, thanks for asking that. That's a really good question, and I think it is a provincial government responsibility technically. I think within the pandemic, and I mean certainly for the Liberal Party in general, this has been a priority for a long time. I think what we saw during the pandemic was, and I heard this very strongly, for a long time I was the chair of the 905 caucus. And we heard a lot from, our members that were listening to their constituents say, hey, like many of the predominantly parents, but predominantly women who are disproportionately impacted by the high cost of childcare, many of them were saying, and we were seeing even in the statistics after the first wave of COVID-19, that as we started to sort of recover, unbeknownst to us, we were going to go through many more waves. But what we saw was that women were returning to the workforce a lot slower than men. And so when we were talking about, well, how do we boost our economy and recover from COVID-19? One of the concerns that came up over and over and over again was, well, how do we ensure that women can not have to choose between having a family and having a career, which, I think is like, the kind of key. And I know that I went through this in my own family with my lovely wife, at the moment that maternity leave ended, and she had to decide whether to go back to work or stay home with our daughter Alexis. It was a real tough decision, and one of the big key factors was, well, how much is childcare going to cost us? Mm-hmm. And so for many, I think, families, and it's not only women, but predominantly it is still today women that I think are taking on a lot of those responsibilities. And I think what we've seen is that this allows women and parents to build both a family and a career. It also allows children the best start possible. And I think that's something we can all agree with. There's no partisanship involved in this. I'm really glad that Ontario sort of finally took advantage of the $10.2 billion that the federal government put on the table many months ago. And they sort of came around to, being the last province to sign on to this agreement. I'm really glad that we now, as a government, have fulfilled our commitment to build a national, inclusive, flexible, affordable early learning and childcare system for Canada. And this means great things for families because, of course, there's immediate reduction in fees. So with the agreement now being signed, there's a direct transfer of funding to the province that will then be able to subsidize the fees. So families will experience in licensed childcare facilities across Ontario as of today, which is great that we're having this interview today because it allows me to say, hey, this is today, 25% reduction in fees. So that's a big deal. And then a 50% reduction on average in fees by the end of this calendar year, so by December. So this is really good news. And then what we're working towards over the 5-year agreement is to get childcare fees down to $10 a day for families. So I don't know about you, but when my daughter was at that age, we were paying upwards of about $1,800 a month for childcare.
Yeah, an awful lot of money. And I know, you're right. An awful lot of families, when it comes time for, the maternity leave is over and the woman to return to the workplace, they have to take a look at, well, is it worth it? Would you be working just to pay childcare? I know that's what it was like when my son was of that age. There were a lot of us that were, taking a look at the paycheck, and a lot of it, the majority of it, went to childcare.
Yeah, you're literally working to have someone else mind your child while you're working.
Exactly.
Does that really pan out in terms of making economic sense for a family? And then you sort of, I think, well, wouldn't it be better if I just stayed home with my son or daughter? Right. And I mean, so many women have that dilemma. And I don't want to generalize. It's not just women, some men as well, but I think predominantly it is a feminist issue. And our Deputy Prime Minister has been clear that this is a feminist policy that makes good economic sense because there's a return to the economy when more women choose to go back to their career or participate in the workforce, they're able to earn income for their families, but they're also contributing to our entire economy. And that creates the evidence shows that for every dollar spent, taxpayer dollar that goes into funding early learning and childcare, there's a $1.50 to $2.80 return to essentially the economy. So there's a return on the investment that outweighs what we're putting into it. So, it's a cost benefit.
I have to ask you, so this agreement covers children in daycare up until the age of 5, correct?
Yeah, it's under 6 years old is what's written into the agreement, is my understanding. Yeah, under 6.
And is this a provincial decision, or was it part of the federal condition?
In terms of where to have the cutoff, is that what you mean?
Yeah, the cutoff and the fact that it was licensed childcares and.
Yeah, so obviously, so licensed childcare is regulated, right? I mean, that's sort of part of, I think, what the government is committed to is making sure that we increase the quality of the daycare as well. So like we're funding new early childhood educator spots. The agreement comes with increases in wages for ECEs, early childhood educators, and more professional development opportunities. And then we know that there needs to be more spaces, right? Because part of some of the issue is there's not enough licensed childcare spaces. So we're investing. So this agreement invests in 86,000 new childcare spaces as well over the next 5 years. We've already, leading up to this, invested funds that have helped create 11,000 new childcare spaces in Ontario. But we know that there's many more spaces needed. And that's part of the issue is that there's not enough spaces. So we're doing both. We're subsidizing, like reducing the fees dramatically to make it more affordable. We're expanding the number of spaces, and then we're ensuring that we have the workforce that's trained and professionally developed and paid properly, because it's important work. Like I call my daughter kind of my precious, the thing that I adore the most, that's most important to me in this world, and every parent is probably the same. And I would say that, our biggest responsibility is and legacy is our children. So it's an important role when, we're talking about early childhood educators. We need to support them. We need to pay them well. So I'm glad to see that Ontario's agreed to pay $1 per year more to their wages every year for 5 years. So that's good. So they'll get, a good bump in wages. Perhaps they should make even more, one could argue, but it's a good progress, right? This wouldn't be happening at all. Like if we didn't push this wouldn't be happening. This is just great news for families.
Okay, and on that note, I'm going to stop you there. We're going to take a quick break. More of our conversation with Whitby MP Ryan Turnbull after this. Don't go away.
This program is brought to you by NBA League Pass. More dunks, more slams, more to love, live in HD. NBA League Pass, part of the Rogers Super Sports Pack.
It was my daughter's birthday. She was blowing out the candles on her cake when we heard coming from the TV. So we stopped and listened, and it helped us get to safety. That's why when I think of my daughter's birthday, because now she gets to keep having them.
And now, hey everybody out in TV land, are you a struggling artist looking to catch a break? I'm the BMD, and I'm starting a new show called Meet the Band. My new show showcases up-and-coming artists locally in the Durham region. The show promotes the artist and their creative content on the Rogers Cable Network. So tune in and connect with me at the BMD Podcast at gmail.com.
Hi, I'm Sean Lackey, and this is Sold with Sean Lackey. You should check us out if you want to find out what's going on in the world of real estate. We'll have all sorts of guests to keep you in the loop on what's going on in this wonderful world.
Hi, I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Allison. Coming up on the next parenting show, we're talking about stepchildren and blended families.
It's a unique situation, and we've got some interesting tips.
That's only on Rogers TV.
You're watching Rogers TV.
And welcome back to Talk Politics. Our guest this week is Whitby MP Ryan Turnbull. Before we went to break, of course, we were talking about the new early learning childcare agreement with the province of Ontario. I have to ask you, do you have to qualify, be of a certain income to qualify?
Well, so no, basically it's universal subsidization of the fees. So reduction in fees will be right across the board. The way that the agreement works is that the funding flows to Ontario and then to licensed childcare centers, and they're able to offer the reduction in fees right across the board. So it doesn't matter how much a family makes, how much income you have, you're going to get the reduction in fees.
And there's also, in addition, this agreement includes a clear commitment to start discussions with our Indigenous partners on developing a plan that supports Indigenous children's access to affordable, high-quality daycare as well, correct?
Correct. Yeah, there's a really big focus on Indigenous communities and ensuring that they have access to the best possible quality childcare as well. And so this is really, there's a carve out specifically for Indigenous people and Indigenous communities to make sure that it's done in a way that's culturally appropriate and that it is in partnership with them, right?
So I have to ask you, Ontario was the last province to sign with the federal government. Was there anything different in this agreement that wasn't in the initial offer to the province?
Well, Debra, not a lot. The agreement sat there for a while, and I think the negotiations were ongoing, and certainly Ontario was trying to get some more things funded. At the end of the day, I think we signed a fair agreement with Ontario that looked very much the same as every other province and territory in terms of the terms and conditions. So there's not much difference, but nonetheless, I think it's a big win for Canadian families, Ontario's families for sure. And I'm really glad that the Ontario government chose to avail themselves of this federal government initiative that I think is going to bring great value to families with young children. Like, it really helps with the cost of living, average of $6,000 of savings per family. That's incredible when you're talking about the cost of living increases that we're experiencing today. This is going to matter to a lot of families.
Especially when you consider how much families are paying for infants. I mean, you pay progressively less as the child gets older. But when I think of what I paid when my son was a baby compared to what people are paying, I honestly don't know how they afford it. Honestly, I don't. So.
Yeah, well, you're right.
It was
expensive.
It was a lot of dough. Okay. I also want to ask you briefly about Canada's response to the situation in Ukraine that just seems never ending. Just when we think, we can take a breath and there's something positive, it goes south again. Canada's response to the situation in the Ukraine, are we doing everything that we can possibly?
Well, I think that we are. I think we're constantly talking about what more we can do. And I think what we've agreed with each other as a caucus and as a government is that we need to do everything we can. And that's what I've seen is this sort of full, very fulsome response to Putin's war on Ukraine. I mean, my heart goes out to the people of Ukraine, watching them take up arms and fight for their freedom and against an aggressor like Putin and Russia. And I know that the Russian people, I don't think really want this war either, and many of them are misinformed by some of the media that Putin controls. And so this is challenging. Like, we've implemented sanctions, just rounds. I have pages and pages here of notes of all the sanctions we've put in place on Putin, the people around him, all of these sort of oligarchs that he, that are in his sort of circle. And the list just keeps increasing, from, working with our allies to boot a lot of the Russian banks off of the SWIFT system, to banning exports and or imports of Russian oil. There's all kinds of sanctions against individual people. We've provided military aid, both lethal and non-lethal military aid. One of the things I'm really proud of too is that Canada years ago, through Operation Unifier, trained over 33,000 Ukrainian troops. So a lot, and I've heard that a lot of the methods that they're using on the ground to successfully, combat in their urban environments, Russian troops and tanks, is the methods that were taught to them by the Canadian Armed Forces. So, that Operation Unifier, which started years ago, has really helped them defend themselves in this time. We've also offered humanitarian aid, and the humanitarian aid is pretty significant. There was 15 million, 35 million. There's another 30 million that's matched through the Red Cross, and another 100 million that we've offered just recently. So the list kind of goes on. Now, I think the biggest focus now is immigration, and ensuring that we can help as many Ukrainians get out as possible. We also know that Poland has been flooded because they've just opened their border. Just incredible show of compassion and willingness to take in their Ukrainian neighbors. And it's it's tear-jerking for me. Like, I think about it, and it's just, it's amazing what we're witnessing. It's horrifying on the one hand, and it's the amount of compassion that countries are showing, and the unified force of many of the allied countries that are standing up to Putin in various ways is really significant, and shows a great unity that perhaps needed an oppositional force to sort of shore up and strengthen that unity. But the immigration issues are really what we're dealing with right now. And Minister Fraser has been on this. There's many aspects of the immigration process that are being dealt with. One that I think is really big is the Canadian-Ukraine authorization for emergency travel. And essentially we're lifting a lot of the kind of requirements for visas to come into the country. So it's not visa-free travel. I hear people calling for that sometimes, but it's very close to it. There's still a little bit of screening, et cetera, to let people in, but it's making sure that we can let in as many Ukrainians as possible, and that they're able to work in Canada. So there's lots of other things I could say, but we've also added troops to the eastern flank, which I think it's in Latvia, is where we've sent Canadian troops that are part of NATO forces to strengthen this show strength on that eastern flank, just in case Putin decides to go a little bit further. I think he knows that NATO is willing and going to defend every inch of their territory.
So. Heartbreaking and scary for sure.
Yeah.
We've only got about, I think, 3 minutes left. So I also want to get your opinion on the Liberal NDP agreement. Why is it a good thing for Canadians?
Well, it's a good question. So I really am positive. I feel very positive about this. One thing I can tell you is that our parliamentary democracy over the last 2 years, going through all of these crises, has not been the most productive place that it could be. I've found it highly toxic. And part of it is the partisan rhetoric coming from the opposition parties, and it's a minority parliament. But I mean, I think Canadians have said they want our government to work effectively together to collaborate for the benefit of Canadians. Like, that's why I got into politics, was to make good things happen for Canadians. And to me, we're aligned with the NDP on many different things that Canadians care about, from climate change to reconciliation to strengthening our healthcare system, dealing with long-term care, pharmacare, dental care. There's many aspects of what the NDP is values and what we have as priorities that are aligned. So to me, this agreement, it's a supply confidence agreement, completely normal within a parliamentary democracy as a tool to use. And it says, okay, the NDP is going to work with us and ensure that the government can move forward on these big priorities. So how does it benefit Canadians? Well, it allows our government to get the big, meaningful, progressive changes made on those fronts that really do represent the majority of Canadians when you think about how the vote is split between the NDP and the Liberals in the last election. So I think it's a really good thing. From what I've seen, Debra, in terms of Parliament, like, although the shouting and screaming and question period will continue, in the background, in the committee rooms and everywhere else, we're working together more effectively than I've seen in the last 2 years since I got elected. It's changed the tone of the conversations we're having, and it's more productive as a result. And to me, that's all I care about. I want to get meaningful things done for Canadians. I don't want to be in politics if it's just partisan attacks. It's not productive. And I'm only here because I believe that we can do big, meaningful things that deeply impact people's lives in a positive way. So let's focus on that. Let's get things done.
We only have about 30 seconds left. So I do want to ask you quickly, Whitby's getting a temporary cricket pitch. That's something that you've been pitching for a while and trying to get federal dollars for a permanent one. 20 seconds. Go.
Whitby cricket is growing in our community, and it's great to see. They need a dedicated cricket pitch. And I've been working with the town both to find a solution that's temporary, but also work towards a permanent pitch with some federal government funding. So it's great to see some movement on that front, Debra.
Okay. And on that, we are out of time. Whitby MP Ryan Turnbull, thanks so much for joining us. You take care of you and feel better soon.
Thanks, Debra. I will.
And thanks to our viewers. Until next time, I'm Debra Hutchison. Stay safe, everybody.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
Your visit isn't really necessary.
I'll judge for myself.
I know you're an MP, Miss McPhail, but a woman has never...
I am not leaving till I do. How can such a society be called civilized? If those appalling conditions don't change, that prison will explode!
Perhaps our lone lady member is too fragile to know what is normal in a prison.
Is this normal?
Her courage would lead to the overhaul of the entire Canadian penal system. Agnes McPhail, Canada's first woman MP.
You know why.
Operation Smile, alongside our medical volunteers, provides safe cleft surgery to children free of charge thanks to generous